Hey guys, um, this is the Treasy Podcast, episode 6 now, which is pretty crazy but awesome. And yeah, I'm excited. Episode 6. Um, I mean, it's, goes without saying, I'm sure everybody's feeling some sort of way. I feel like obviously, we had COVID and just all that sort of just chaos and such a big thing that we all had to go through or still going through. And then obviously, now um, the protests, it's hard to really comprehend fully, you know? Um, and for me, I'm Korean American. I was born and raised here. I grew up in New Jersey, very suburban upbringing. I always felt pretty safe, secure. It was a bubble though. We had maybe three Black people in our town, high school. Everyone knew who they were because there was only three of them. Um, yeah, I grew up with mostly white people, Jewish people, lots of Korean people, and Asian people in general. Yeah, I mean, I think it took me a while to understand like implications and history of like systemic oppression. I mean, these are like huge ass things, right? Um, so all of this is like making me think about like why is there racism at all? What's the history of that? Not just, you know, um, sort of like white people who, you know, um, would would like make it scientific, like right, like they put it in books, like oh, the Black person is literally inferior, like physically and scientifically, which of course is all bullshit. But like why is there even racism? Why like psychology, like why do people even have to feel like um the need to like other, like the need to have some sort of hierarchy, which it's not just racism. It's also like uh what's the term, like classism too, right? Like social, like basically I'm talking about money. um because we do that too throughout history, like the feudal system, right? Like landowners and then people who just work on the land, like who determines that? Why does that have to be? And I guess I'm talking out loud and it makes me think like I guess the people who have power are the ones who decided to create that system because it benefits them. So logically that makes sense, even though it's fucked up. um but yeah, it just makes me think like, are human beings like, there's a part of us that needs to feel dominant. um is that just like a innate part of being human, which like, because people say racism is a social construct, like you're taught that. um and I agree with that, but I'm trying to like go like into history and like trying to understand where that comes from psychologically. Like um is it like just human to like have to be more dominant, which means then you have to create some sort of structure where people are inferior. Like, is that just human? Because that exists in history in all different parts of the world. Like, it's not just a white person thing, which I mean, obviously, I'm just talking out loud now, but my brain goes there because it. But the other thing that I was reflecting on is that even though we have so much inequality right now in 2020, and there are lots of things that, like, our systems are really inefficient and they don't work, and at worst they discriminate. um it's also still true that right now is like the most free for for people overall, um which is also true. And I'm not saying like we should settle for that, or like uh that's good enough, like, not at all. Obviously, I'm going to a protest myself this Saturday, so in 2 days, and I'm really looking forward to it. I went to the Women's March. I went to the March for Our Lives, and those happened to be, both of them were so big. I went to the ones in New York City, and it just feels incredible. Like, if you need something to restore your faith in people and our environment, like, you just need to go to a protest, because it's it's just so empowering, and you feel like not alone, and it feels awesome to be around other people who just give a shit, and they showed up. And yeah, and it's just so nice. Like, you look back at the sea of people, and there's young people and old people and white people and whatever, everyone. And so I recommend it if you, well, everyone feels differently about this right now, and I think that's fine. Like, whatever you need to do to feel safe, there's plenty of ways to, like, still support in how you think. Um, Also, I mean, PS, for the protest on Saturday that I'm going to um, try to do a podcast with that. Like, hopefully, I can record some stuff, and just kind of like share my experience and bring you on the journey for that. So that should be really cool. But yeah, all of this to me is about like racism and how deep it goes. You know, within the Asian culture, and just I don't even know if saying culture is the right word, but there's a lot of stuff in our, you know, in our families where it's specific negative sentiments against Black people. That is a thing. That is a real thing. It's pretty. Um, it's pretty generally there for most Asian people. I mean, obviously you can't assume, but like most Asian people, there's something there with that. And from it's it's not right, of course. Like, there's no way that that could be right, to dislike or have negative perceptions or feelings on a whole group of people. Like, what the fuck? But there's some stuff, for example, the LA riots that happened, I think it was in the 90s, where it was similar to now, but I don't think the movement was as big. But I think there was a wrongful killing of a Black person as well. And so people protested, but then it turned into riots and looting in LA. And there are a lot of Korean people in LA. I think even now, but at the time there were a lot of Korean people. They're immigrants, right? Like they just came to the country, and their first job is owning a dry cleaners or owning a deli. Um, and so during these riots and protests, many Korean-owned businesses were completely just like looted, and there was a lot of resentment for that. Um, on a personal level, you can like kind of understand, right? Like it's an immigrant, no less, right? Someone trying to make it into this country, like, and then all they have, their whole business, is fucked. Um, and that's real too. Like, so I feel like there's some resentment with stuff like that there. Um, Not that that's right, but I'm just trying to share that that's a real thing that happened, and that could be the reason why. But it goes really deeper, you know? That was the 90s. I mean, my grandma is racist, and she's 89, right? Like she didn't become racist when she was 70 because of the LA riots. So I don't honestly know the source of that. I don't know why Asian people um, don't like Black people, like historically, culturally, like going back, like you know, a very long time. My grandma's 89, um, and I've like had, you know, mad fights with my grandma, crying fights where I get very heated, and it ultimately, like, I don't understand, I will never understand, and it makes me like sad ultimately, like, and also it's really hard for me to like just comprehend, like, my grandmother is a very clever person in so many other facets of her life, and for her to have this kind of opinion in such a strong way is like a complete disconnect to me. Like, I don't, it doesn't make sense. um and how can you be sympathetic to racism? Like, you can't, you know. But it's like interesting, like I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know why that exists within the Asian community so far back, except that they were probably taught, right? Since this is a social construct, this is something people are taught. um, there's a in a book, um, it's written by a Korean American author, and she mentioned something about how, like, Asian Americans in particular, as far as all the minorities, are used by white people to prop up their idea of like, pick yourself up from your bootstraps. Like, look at Asian people. They're so successful. Look at them. You know, they're making the American dream happen for themselves. Like, they work really hard. So everything we are doing is right. All the systems are right. Look at Asian people, model minority, right? Um, and so I wonder if some of that same idea of Asian people being used again and taught again to like, I mean, I don't know, because it goes so far back. Like my grandma, 89 years, 90 years ago, 1930. Like I mean, I guess I could rabbit hole that one, to be honest, and like try to look into history as to why there's these sentiments and beliefs. But it's obviously not okay. And it's something that um, Asian people, particularly my generation, I'm 32 years old, like we have to look within ourselves and like really check ourselves. Like, everyone is racist. You have to understand that. Like, the subconscious and the unconscious parts of ourselves like carry shit that we have no idea. It doesn't make us bad people. Um, but you just have to like check yourself and be aware and like just observe it, like, oh shit, like, why did I have that attitude? Or was that like okay of me to say? Um, I think that extra sensitivity goes a long way, because once you recognize things like about your own self and how you think and behave, your behavior matters most, really, rather than your thoughts, in my opinion, because I think we can think lots of stupid shit and we don't have to pay attention to it. Like the idea that every thought is super important or valid is, I think, is crazy. Like we think ridiculous shit all the time. So, yeah, these are the thoughts I'm kind of grappling with, um, but and I also did want to share that today's Thursday, and 2 days ago on Tuesday, I am moving out. I'm moving to a new apartment, um, which is awesome and sweet. Um, and so I went over to our landlord's office, which is 2 doors down, to let them know, give 60 days notice. And because of COVID, I rang the doorbell, and like I kind of stood there. There's a door to get in, and then there's like another door to like walk into the office. So there's an in between, and you have to be buzzed into both. And so I just got stuck in here. And this white old man walks out, and I recognize him. He is So the management company is named Pronti, and this old white guy is like Pronti. Um, and he walked out, and he was like, basically like, what can I do for you? And I was like, oh, I'm here to put in my 60 days. And he says, um, give me a minute. And he walks back into the office. So I can't see him, but the door is open so I can hear him. And he's like talking. It's all kind of mumbly. I don't really um, hear exactly what he's saying, but the part that I do hear is he goes, I don't know, some Asian girl's at the door. Um, and that really, it was an immediate moment of like, it just hurt, like to hear that. The tone around it. Some Asian girl. The dismissiveness, the um the just sort of, I guess it's mainly the dismissiveness, and it's like, I'm a person and you can ask my name, and I don't have to be some Asian girl, but you don't care to ask my name. Like I am some Asian girl to you because you decided that that's how you want to see me or treat me. Um, and it can sound really small, um, but it really wasn't small for me. Um, I was like so mad. I went 0 to 100. Um, when he came back, I just had daggers in my eyes, and I was like glaring at him. Um, he goes, "Oh, just put your 60-day notice letter through the window, you know," and then walks away. Um, and yeah, and I'm sharing that story. I think because like you just never know what you can say when it comes to race, and yeah, that um, you want to be careful, you know. I mean, I just thought of an opposite example where I've said something that offended somebody, but it had more to do with um, I guess the term is social class, right? Or I'm talking like about the fact that some people have more money and less. It was my bachelorette. I thought that my friend couldn't come, and I was upset. Um, and so I was venting to my coworkers. And the reason why this person couldn't come was due to money, like she couldn't afford it. But I was really upset at the time because I felt that I had given everyone a very long heads up, and um, yeah, I just felt like there really isn't an excuse, and obviously was just thinking about myself. Um, and was just hurt. I was just hurt that I felt like I gave people a very long notice to save money or whatever the case may be. And I also um, made actively tried to make my activity for my bachelorette to be affordable. Um, and it was. I think it was a little over $100 for it was like a limo ride, and we got to go see three different wineries, everything included, including food and water. And so that's a decent deal, honestly. Um, so in that moment, I was very upset, thinking about myself, venting to some coworkers, and I had one coworker who was very, and I was crying. So I was being totally, I mean, if I look back, I mean, I think I was being pretty dramatic. But at the same time, I think it's okay for me to be upset about something like that. Like, you only get married once, and I mean, at least for me, I plan to only get married once, and I was having a bachelorette, and like my friend, like last minute, told me she wasn't gonna make it. So with those things, it's like it's kind of justified, but me crying over it, like, yeah, that's probably extra. So I was crying over it, and then my coworkers, um, kind of like I felt snapped at me. And the visual is like I'm venting and crying, and she goes like, Teresa, I think that you are like not thinking about how much privilege you have. Um, like if she can't afford it, like people like have a lot of stuff that they financially have to deal with. Like if she can't afford it, like that's a privilege thing. Something along to that line. And her tone was very like the tone was in that way. It was not said in a gentle way. Um, and she meant what she said. And I was really upset in the moment. I was like, what the fuck? Like I'm crying. Like if someone's crying, your first response to that person should not be like the tone should not be like you're, whatever the case. But what I learned afterwards is that that coworker in particular, and she is on the same level as me as far as our roles, so she probably gets paid similar to me. And I work for a nonprofit. She uses her whole salary, or two-thirds of her salary goes to supporting her household because she still lives with her mom, and she has a young brother who is, I don't know, really young. And there might be other people who live in the household. I just don't know. Um, and that's wild, right? Like, I don't have those kinds of responsibilities. My paycheck goes for me, myself, and I. I don't have kids. Um, and so, yeah, that is privilege. That is privilege that I have. Um, and so it's interesting. It it made me understand where she was coming from more, a lot more. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. It's like, well, is it wrong of me to feel bad that, well, my friend ended up being able to come to the bachelor anyway, so this is a moot point. I like misunderstood anyway. But it's just those two examples, like it's just interesting how like you just never know what someone is going through, what they have, their upbringing, and it's like you can't assume different things. But I think for me, like I think it was still human of me to be upset. that if my friend didn't come, but I can still at the same time understand that I have privilege in that. So I feel like both are true. Like it is privilege that I'm able to even, I guess, have a bachelorette, right? And like afford that. But it's also like I'm human, and to be upset that my friend last minute bailed is also like valid too. And I guess the point I'm trying to make, or maybe there is no point, but um, we have to like not also like resent each other for what we don't know, or everyone has different ways that they like view being able to help. Some people right now, I've talked to some people and they feel very guilty because they feel like they're not doing enough. Um, but this is like really deep. It's not just about George Floyd. This is about racism and oppression overall and equality and like such deeper things that like whatever you have the capacity to do is enough. It's enough, you know? You don't need to feel guilty about it. It's like just do what you can and take a break too, because this is like fucking a lot. And that's what I plan to do. We have to remind ourselves that this is like a really deep thing. It's not just about police brutality, which is a part of it, obviously, but it's really not the main thing at all. Which is why, like, I feel like it's a bit draining at times and it's overwhelming. Um, and that's why my brain goes to like, why does racism exist at all? Why did human beings feel the need to create systems uh, where there's like a hierarchy? Like, why do we feel the need to do that at all? Like, it's wild, right? And in history, all people have done it. It's not just white people. And I'm not justifying anything. Like, but it's just a lot. So do what you can, don't feel too guilty. It's like this is overwhelming. And have inspiration in the fact that like, well, when you feel like it, I guess. Um, because like I said, it is true that 2020 right now in this moment, June 4th, like this world is more free than it was before in any point in history, even though there's still so much to do, or still so much to fight for. um it just was a hell of a lot worse before. Like I would not want to be born in like a different time, you know what I mean? So that's it. Those are my thoughts. Hope that this resonated with some people. And it all starts with ourselves and like what we can make aware to ourselves of how we behave, and just make little adjustments here and there, and that's it. And it's it's a constant work in progress, and I think accepting that is probably uh, better than being like, I need to do all this stuff. It's like we're human too, and we need a break. And I just want to laugh, and that's like totally fine. All right, happy Thursday, all. I will record again when I go to the protest on Saturday. Won't have video footage for that probably. I don't think. I'm gonna just try to do it audio. And yeah, thanks for listening, as always.